Hi, my name is Doug Smith, and this is another session of our PEDC It's the Economy series. Today we have with us Gary Gump, who is the chairman of the Sustainable Energy Subcommittee. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Could you give me a little idea of how the Sustainable Energy Subcommittee got started and why?
Yeah, good question. Probably 5 years ago or so, 2005, more or less. The subcommittee is a part of our Economic Development Committee, as I think you mentioned a little bit earlier. And in the fall, I think, say the fall of 2005, roughly speaking, we were discussing ways in which we could further our contribution to the town in terms of helping to either stimulate the economy on the one hand in our town. I think previously you've talked a little bit about the charter of the PEDC, and part of it is to provide guidance to the town in ways in which we can bring economic prosperity to our town and improve the quality of life and sustain what we have here without huge increases in our taxes. So along that line, we were just kind of a round-robin discussion, and we were talking about different ways in which we might move the ball forward and as far as helping the town goes. And I don't know exactly who it was that brought it up at the moment. It's not important, but the Portsmouth Abbey was in the middle of the process of getting approval to put up a wind generator on their site. So we began to talk a little bit about renewable energy, and that led to a discussion about not only renewable energy, but sustainable energy and sustainable quality of life and styles in the town. And so over a couple of meetings, we thought about the idea about how we might do things, about how it might work, and kind of developed a couple of broad guidelines and proposed that we create a standing committee called the Sustainable Energy Subcommittee, and we did. And probably had about, since the committee started, the same 4 colleagues have been in it pretty much from the beginning. We had a couple of other members that were in it, and for other reasons they've gotten out of it. But basically, the Sustainable Energy Subcommittee was created to look at ways in which we could bring new ideas to the town and that would help in a couple of ways. One of them I mentioned earlier was the sustainability of the style of life we have here. Part of that is in reducing expenses and making sure that we can enjoy the same things without rising taxes all the time. So that led to the renewable energy. Renewable energy side of it, of course, has been the primary drive. But basically, we have 3 areas that we're looking at in terms of the Sustainable Energy Subcommittee primary organization. We're looking at ways in which we can directly affect the town's use of energy in terms of creating new energy through renewable energy, which becomes very sustainable, in ways in which we can reduce energy consumption, be more efficient, turn the lights off, simple things of that nature, but also bring new technologies to the city that, to our town rather, that provides improvements in savings. And then thirdly, to educate the community, to make sure that everyone in our town has an appreciation for what sustainability means and for what we're doing.
Well, I know that the wind turbine, of course, is your first and probably biggest accomplishment of getting this thing up and running for the town. But I think people should also know that you've done projects on those other things. I know you've encouraged the town and brought together the town and National Grid to look at programs to save energy by creating more energy efficient buildings, et cetera, et cetera. You've also looked at the possibility and trying to get the town together with some people that are looking at solar energy, small components, perhaps building size components. All of those are part of this. What else do you see that you can do to get the town involved in looking at those kind of projects?
Well, there's a kind of a broad brush of activities that are going on that we're involved in. Some of the things that we're involved in are small items, incremental changes.
Sure.
Other ones potentially have a significant impact for us. You know, there's Aquidneck Island energy initiative that's underway. It's part of the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission, and we participate in that. And you mentioned National Grid. National Grid is working with this Aquidneck Island Energy Incentive to bring awareness to all of the citizens that live here year-round to help reduce energy consumption. National Grid has a huge problem. I beg your pardon, I shouldn't say that. National Grid has a growing challenge every year because as we consume more and more energy, their existing network begins to near the upper limits of what it was planned for. So they've got to come up with ways in which they can increase the capacity of the network or reduce the consumption, make us more efficient.
Yeah.
So a few dollars spent in getting us to turn lights off is a lot easier than trying to
So it's in National Grid's interest to,
absolutely
to support those
right,
programs.
and so they've made funds available. There's all kinds of small projects that go on. There's a summer awareness for sustainability that we participate in. In fact, in middle of this week, the Rhode Island, the People Power and Light, which is a sustainable energy company, they're hosting an annual sustainability day up at the wind turbine site here in Portsmouth. Wow. So those kinds of things are going on, but probably the other side of it that we don't see often, the state legislature has been involved in introducing new legislation to fine-tune or eliminate some of the barriers that are currently out there for renewable energy. Renewable energy is a little bit like any other kind of new technology. It takes a little bit to get it going. So some of the, I think there's been a lot of hue and cry about subsidies for renewable energy. Well, P.S. there's subsidies for the railroads and for airplanes and for everything else. But we're getting over that, and our legislators have gotten a lot smarter. So we've got a whole series. This year we've got 3 new sets of bills that are passed, waiting for the governor to sign, and they'll turn into some new legislation and new tariffs that we think will improve renewable energy, not only for a project the scale we've got for our town, but for residences. Those are all important things. So we're involved in a lot of those things.
Sure. Well, I want to go out and take a look at the wind turbine. That's your largest and most successful project to date, I think, and the one for which you're best known.
Sure. Let's do it.
And let's take a look.
All right. Absolutely.
Okay, so Gary, how did this wind turbine project get started?
Well, actually, about 5 years ago, 2005, the PEDC was looking at different ways in which we could help with our town's overall expenses and continue to do things in addition to working on economic development, actually directly impact some of the costs for our town. And just coincidentally, at the very same time, the Portsmouth Abbey was in the process of putting up a wind generator, which has been up now some just about 5 years. And that led us to discuss whether or not we could possibly consider a wind generator for the town of Portsmouth. A little bit of serendipity there, almost at exactly the same time that the Abbey was in the process of acquiring and putting in a wind generator. The Rhode Island Renewable Energy Office came out with a request for proposals for towns that were interested in possibly putting up a wind generator. So we approached our town council members. We told them that we'd like to take a crack at it. They said, sure, go ahead. So we did, and more or less the rest is history.
Okay, do you think having the Portsmouth Abbey's wind turbine already in existence helped you gain support in the town?
Huge benefit, absolutely. I mean, it dispelled a lot of myths about the wind generator. It let people get up close and personal to it. Not only that, it was almost immediately, it was producing energy at more or less the levels the forecast came out at and saving the Abbey money. So we had an empirical fact, if you will. I mean, here's a wind generator. It's making more or less the revenues that were projected. It's not offensive. It's not a thing to be feared by anyone, and it's working. And then, interesting, the Abbey, Brother Joseph and the whole Abbey was absolutely overly generous in allowing us to use the site, to bring people over, to support us in all kinds of ways.
What else did you do to try to gain support in the town?
Well, good question. We, all along the way, part of the program here was to keep our town council and the town informed of what we were doing. So after we presented our idea about soliciting this proposal for funds to do a study, we got the funds, we came back, we did the study, then we went back to town council, we gave them results of that, and along the way we did a couple, once we decided that from our perspective that we thought the PEDC's perspective that this could be a viable opportunity, then we actively and actually a little bit aggressively got started trying to make sure that we were broadcasting what we wanted to do to the whole community so that no one could come back and make a comment about, you know, that this appeared out of nowhere for the town. And we hosted a series of workshops, a couple of open houses over at the Abbey. We went on our local Rhode Island Public TV to do a couple of interviews to discuss it. And again, we were in front of the town council probably a half a dozen times over the course of the project.
So you guys took a lot of effort and time to make sure that the whole community was getting behind this.
Well, not only that, once we got the green light from the town council to take another step, which was to actually see, you know, what the real economics were going to look like and whether or not we could get funding for it. At the same time, we did a survey. We did a mail out to about 1,000 residents here in town, all the abutters around the high school, the abutters around the middle school, which were the two sites that had the best one and the biggest load, and about another 500 at random. The results back were very positive, somewhere I think probably around 80%. So we had a pretty solid endorsement from the community to take that step. And then as we went along, we went back to town council and I said, okay, well, we believe this is what the economics can be. We believe we can qualify for these funds. There were federal low interest rate funds available. But to really put the icing on the cake, we'd like to propose a referendum. So the town agreed that we could do a referendum if we could get it through the legislature. So this subcommittee worked with our local legislators to get a bill.
Through the state legislature.
Right, and so the state had to approve the referendum. And then we had a referendum in I think in 2008, and we had about a 61 or 62% approval on the referendum. Fairly solid endorsement from the community at large.
Sure.
For the project. So with that in hand, then we really began the program.
Now, when did this turbine start to be put up, and did you have any problems along the way?
Well, we you know, the longest journey begins with the first step. So the first step was to find the funding, and originally we applied for a $2.6 million zero-interest loan with the idea that that would be more than enough funds to put up the turbine. As we got further along in the project, we discovered that we probably needed at least $3 million to have a viable program. So then we had to go look for another $400,000, which we managed to get from the Rhode Island Renewable Energy Fund. We sought a grant. We couldn't get a grant, but we did get a 2%, essentially a low-interest loan from them. So then we had the funding to make the purchase. Once we went through an RFP and we selected a vendor, and actual program of installing equipment began. The first step, the summer of 2008, we excavated the site here. Well, along the way, actually, I should say, to back up for a moment, the high school site is the site of Fort Butts, which was a historic Revolutionary War battle. So we had to get the Rhode Island Historical Society involved and have them come out and do a survey to make sure there were no artifacts here that were of significance that would keep us from building the turbine. So we got past that hurdle.